Good there.
days, and then we were able to get the lease over to the company. So he's got it rented out at $1,650. He bought it for $165 cash, but includes pretty much everything. So
And then, so he bought it for 165 and is renting it, you're saying?
yeah, and it's $1,650 a month. So they came back on market. Previous buyer backed out. So we closed, we went under contract at 165. It was listed at 175, and we closed. Got the contract accepted Thursday, and we closed Monday or Tuesday. I don't remember which one. This is one of the two.
Nice. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, two clap. Good stuff. How about Mr. Andy Wise, who I know you're one of Eric's mentors as well, which is cool.
Eric makes me look really good. That guy just works hard. He works really hard. So, yeah, so a win for me. I got a connection in Tennessee. I got my license not long ago in Tennessee. I got a connection in Tennessee that he raises money, and we are working a deal right now to develop out probably 20 acres or so with some mountain chalet type things. For those of you familiar with those kind of areas, what they do. So pretty excited about that. It'll be a long project, but it'll be kind of fun to do. So
Heck yeah.
yeah, excited.
Is that by Norris?
Gatlinburg, actually, for him. He's down by the Smoky Mountains National Park. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Got it. Two clap. Hey, does anyone know what this is? Is this one of the things we're going to be dealing with? This Brian added read AI meeting notes to the meeting. What is that in the chat? I'm going to opt out. I have no idea what this is, so I'm going to opt out. Interesting. So this is something we might have to be dealing with, Mr. Eric, but cool. How about, oh, Nicole is here. Nicole, how about you share a win, personal or business?
Hi, everyone. I have been working really hard to get networking in place with realtors. So like the last couple of years, I've really focused on that. And then I had a win on Sunday. I had a realtor call me and say, hey, I have a client and her grandma's in foreclosure. And this lady lived in Trinidad, Colorado, which is super far south. I had no idea where it even was. I had to look it up. And so I was able to go onto EXP for Colorado, ask if anyone knew an investor who's buying down there or someone who's selling down there, and was able to connect them with a realtor and investor as well, who already owns 7 houses down there. So he's meeting it on Saturday with them, and it was super exciting to have that and make that connection for her.
Heck yeah,
Nice.
that's awesome.
Yeah, big win. Two clap. Good stuff. Anybody else have anything great to share? It doesn't have to be business. It could be just personal. Maybe you got married, you got engaged, or you have a kid on the way like myself. Another girl. All right, cool. Oh, Philip is here. Hello, Philip. Good to have you as well. Cool. So yeah, my win, there's lots of good stuff always happening, but let's see here. Oh, I got 3 seller referrals within the last 3 days. So that's a big win. So I don't know if I'm going to get them all, of course. Some, like actually one of the 3 I already said, like, I don't want to even work with him because he was already, first thing out of his mouth is, can you do 3.75 commission? The seller. And I was like, look, if that's all you really care about, I don't know if I'm the best fit for you, you know, and the short version of giving you. But I mean, I talked to him for a while before I realized like this dude is not worth my time, to be honest. So sometimes you have to say no. And that's a lesson in itself. So to clap. Awesome. Let's get started. So today's topic, we're continuing on with creative financing, or in this case, creative closings. And we're going to talk about 3 types of wholesaling specifically. Let me actually make this larger. Where Where is it? I always. There you go. Cool. All right, Eric, you see this? Are you good, Eric? You see my screen?
I don't know what's going on with my computer. I muted myself. Yeah, I see it.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. All right, so we're going to talk about creative deal structuring, the theme that we've been in for the last couple times, and types of wholesaling. So, you know, there might be more that others are doing, and there's, you know, some are even doing wholesaling and wholesale and crazy stuff like that. We're not going to cover things as crazy as that. I don't agree with wholesaling and wholesale and things to that nature. I like things cleaner. I like things, you know, ethical and a little more efficient. So the first one that we're going to talk about is just going to be a normal assignment. Then we're going to talk about a double closing, and then another version of a double closing where the buyer brings the actual money.
Yep.
Before we do that, a couple announcements that these meetings are now on the first and third Thursday of the month. Before we were doing them weekly. So we're changing it to a first and third Thursday of the month to have a little bit of a better rhythm and have time in between as well for everybody and ourselves, so we can brainstorm how to improve the community, have more time for marketing and things of that nature. All the recordings are now posted on our YouTube channel, which is cool. So I'm going to share the link to that. So that's where you will find all of the recordings. I want to put that in the chat right now. If you want to go to that and subscribe to our YouTube channel that we just started recently, or technically I rebranded a channel that I had that was along the same line of what we're talking about, being the investor agent. So that's what we did there. And I think that's it, really. So those are the main announcements, but let's get into the first one. So Eric, you want to maybe start with this one, the simple one?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is probably the most common wholesale I see. So assignment is going to be you as the wholesaler are getting the property under contract with the seller, and you're using a contract that allows an assignment, which means you're signing a contract stating, I'm going to find somebody to purchase this property. I'm buying it from you. Let's say you're buying it for $100,000. That's what the seller's getting. You can kind of talk to them about their proceeds. And then what you're doing from there forward is you're going to some other buyers, investors, people who are going to be paying cash, and you're saying, hey, I've got this deal. It's 120, 125, 130, whatever you can decide that you want that wholesale fee to be. Couple of things with assignment wholesaling. One, like a lot of residential contracts that agents use aren't going to allow an assignment, or if they do, it's going to have to be checked on the contract. A lot of them, though, are typically going to have some sort of verbiage that it cannot be assigned. So like when we wholesale off properties, we actually have, to keep it easy, we have like a 1 to 2 page contract. And I can actually provide you guys with that. And it's super easy, spelled out. We have a lawyer's the one who ended up doing it. And it's just stating, hey, this is what we're purchasing it for. You can't hold us, you know, accountable. Assignment's kind of a great way to do it because there's going to end up being less risk involved. You're not closing on the property if you can't find a buyer. Not that you should do this ever, but you don't have to close on the property. So that's kind of assignment wrapped up. And then there's some other things with it as well. But I one is probably going to be the best if you're wholesaling because it's keeping you from actually having to close on the property. It's taking some of the risk off your hands. You're able to find the buyer. You don't have to provide cash. So if you don't have the money to finance it, you're actually just assigning this off to a different buyer. Title company or lawyer is actually going to handle making sure that it goes, that buyer brings the funds, the seller signs, and then that buyer signs.
Yeah, let me add to this too, is every state is going to have different guidelines. So that's main thing you got to remember, that some states don't even allow wholesaling, right?
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother, issue that you might have to deal with locally. If you are a licensed agent, because again, this is for both audiences, this mastermind for agents and investors. So if you are an agent here, that tells me that you want to learn how to work with investors better, or maybe you want to learn how to invest yourself. And if you're an investor here, you want to learn how to work with agents and invest, right? So if you're listening to it from an agent perspective and you want nothing to do with the investing yourself, but you want to work with investors, it's very important for you to understand what investors do, right? And this is the idea behind today's training as well, is that think about what you're hearing from your point of view, from the hat you're wearing, right? Because the more you understand what we do as investors, and I say we because I'm both, and many of you here are both because we surveyed you as earlier as well. Think about how will this benefit me? And if you're an agent and you understand what the investor is doing with an assignment, or if they're going to say, hey, we're going to do a double close, Mr. Agent, and you'd be like, okay, you're not alarmed. Where if I'm working with new agents and I'm trying to do an assignment and they've never done one, like a red flag goes off because they don't understand what the heck we're doing, right? And they get all nervous and scared. So the more you understand what we do as investors and what investors do, the easier it will be for you to conduct business with investors, right? And assignments is common. I can't say that everybody does does assignments. Our investment company, we rehab more than we assign. We might assign maybe 1 out of 10 properties. Most of the other ones we actually would like to rehab, right? So it depends on the flavor of the investor that you're working with. And I think asking those questions up front is going to let you know what to expect, right? So ask better questions. You're going to understand the investor you're working with. And then, okay, you can straight up just ask the investor like, hey, are you planning on closing on this one and rehab it? Or are you actually planning on doing an assignment? So you're prepared, right? No, with assignments, there will be more risk, right? That sometimes the end buyer, because their end buyer, in this case, the rehabber for this visual purposes for you, the rehabber is taking your position, right? And they're agreeing to taking your position based on the contract that you wrote with the seller. So if you remove yourself from your position by creating an assignment, and the assignment strictly just says, hey, you're willing to take my position in this contract with this seller that I have on this purchase and sale agreement, and then once you agree to my price that I want from you, which the difference between your price and what I have locked up with the seller is going to come to me as an assignment fee. That's technically what they're agreeing on in the assignment contract, right?
And then, not to cut you off, two things just real quick before I forget, because I'm going to forget them.
Yeah.
If you're assigning a contract, your end buyer is agreeing to the terms in the contract you have set in place. That includes everything, closing date, everything. So they're taking over the entire terms of the contract. The second thing was, we had a really good question that I wanted to, this is one of the downfalls to doing an assignment. Why would the seller go along with that? Do you stop them from listing on the MLS? For one, if you're wholesaling a property and you're an agent, confirm with state laws, your broker and everything like that, you need to explain to the seller, don't be a shady wholesaler, somebody that's like, hey, this is like top value or something like that. You need to explain to them that like, hey, if your situation calls for it, I have a solution to offer where I can get you a cash buyer. It's just not going to be me, but I have the cash buyers. Make sure everybody in the situation knows that you're assigning the contract, because I've seen it. We haven't had it happen, but I've seen it happen with some other wholesalers where it's actually fallen through because the seller gets to closing and they realize that they're getting 100,000, but then the end buyer is paying 180,000, and they're like, why in the heck am I not getting this 180,000? Or they circumnavigate it, get out of the contract, and we'll just do it to the buyer and sell for 160, and they both get a deal.
So let me add on that though, because not every state you need to disclose to the seller what you're actually assigning the contract for.
Yeah. So
like, for example, like in California, I'm doing now a lot of my wholesales is with land, right? So the way I'm doing it is when I have someone that wants to buy my piece of land, which is basically the same thing, there's just no house on it. I'm first going to get the end buyer agree to my price that I want to sell it to them for. And I just say that this is an assignment. I'm being very honest with them in my assignment contract. And I'm saying specifically that the price you're buying it and the price that I have the contract at with this person, and I even disclose the person's name, the sellers, the difference between the two is going to be my assignment fee. So the end buyer has no idea what I have my property locked up at. So that's important if it's allowed in your state. And then the seller, essentially, once I actually get the assignment contract signed by my end buyer, and then I get my escrow company to then process the assignment and change the buyer on the actual contract now to be this end user, not me anymore. They don't have to disclose to the seller what my assignment fee is, at least in California, if it's done correctly. And if it's done with the right escrow company. Not every escrow company or title company or attorney is going to follow the same rules and regulations that maybe even are allowed in your state, but maybe they don't want to do it. So it's so crucial that you find an investor-friendly escrow company. Like, we're an escrow state in California, and I have a very, very investor-friendly escrow company. If you're an attorney state, you got to find a very investor-friendly attorney state, right? Some only deal with title that does both on your side.
Yeah.
So before you do anything, if you even want to consider wholesaling or work with investors that do wholesales, it's so important that the right people are in place, because they could literally blow up your deal, because they might actually disclose things that you didn't want them to. And I agree with what Eric said. Many cases, if the seller finds out that this end user that you just assigned a contract to and you in the middle are making this spread, it will probably blow up in your face in most cases, which is what we're going to talk about next, which is going to be, at that point, you do a double closing. So my rule of thumb, if I'm making 5, 10,000, maybe 15,000 on the wholesale with the land wholesaling that I do now, I'm okay doing a simple assignment that we're talking about right now, right? Where I make so even if the seller finds out or whatever, it's not that big of a deal because it's not that much money. But the moment I start getting into bigger spreads and bigger assignment fees of 20, 30, 40, 50,000, my suggestion at that point is to do a double closing, which we're going to go into in a moment. But this is the cheapest way to do it, because doing a simple assignment allows you to do it even for a couple $1,000s. Like, I'm doing an assignment right now that's closing in Tennessee on the land, and we're going to make $5,000. But there's no closing costs at all, because we're asking the assigner to cover their closing costs. We're not having any closing costs. I'm removing myself. They take my position and they have their closing costs. The seller has closing costs, and I'm just making the flat fee of $5,000, which makes sense. But if I had to double close, that $5,000 would basically disappear and would make no sense for me to do it.
Yeah. And you can ask for a separate ALTA or settlement statement, which would keep both of those separate. But yeah, just make sure that you're being careful, like, especially state. We always disclose typically what it's going to be for both the buyer and seller. And we just let the seller know, hey, we're finding you a buyer. Typically, though, if we're wholesaling at all, it's a situation where the seller really doesn't have time to list. They're in a really tight spot. So we're just kind of helping them out and then finding a buyer, making in between. But the double close is actually the way we do it most commonly. So that's the next one. This is the way that we typically do all of our wholesales, because one, it guarantees the seller their funds. Like, if we double close, the seller is getting paid, we're closing on it, we've already run our numbers. Two, it's a little bit easier when you're selling the property, because you can say, hey, we purchased it, it's in our name. You're not dealing with some seller you're not associated with. It's us, we're the seller. Yeah, we're making money on this, but we took on the risk of purchasing the property. One of the things that we have to make sure that we do, though, when we do these double closings, is we always have to have multiple exit strategies. So we can't just go into it and say, we're for sure going to wholesale this off. Because just because the numbers make sense to us, you send it out to 100 investors, and it might work for 1 or 2 investors, but right now they might have their hands tied. So we always make sure that when we do a double closing, because we own the property, we make sure it either makes sense as a rental or a flip or a wholesale. And it kind of has to hit all 3 for us to move forward.
Perfect. And let me add this to this point, because it will apply to the double close as well, is in this case, I'm putting down the deposit initially because I have the contract signed with the seller. Let's say the deposit is $1,000. My assignment contract with the rehabber is going to state that I want $1,000 from them also to go and replace me. So they're basically putting the $1,000 that's going to replace my $1,000, and the escrow company is going to return my $1,000, right? Because they're taking my position in this case, where it's just a straight up assignment. Okay. So that's important to know in this situation. In a double closing, in this one, you also are putting up the deposit, right? But you're also now bringing the cash to close on the deal as well. So you have to have hard money or whatever you're working with, private money, lined up. There is also even transactional funders out there that mainly deal with double closings, because in a perfect situation, a double closing happens the same day. Like the first closing happens and then boom, after that, the second closing happens, right? And again, not all escrow companies are open to doing it. Not all attorneys are open to doing it. It might be allowed in your state, but that doesn't mean they want to do it. And just because they say no to you doesn't mean it's not allowed in your state yet. Research it further, right? Talk to more attorneys, talk to more escrow companies, find the right one. It's the same in our industry. You don't want to work with every investor if you're an agent working with investors if they don't fit your criteria. And if you're an investor, you don't want to work with every agent, right? Because if you're going to try to work with an agent that's a top producer, doesn't care about you as an investor, why would you do that? Why would you even try? So you have to talk to more people until you find the right fit, including your vendors, right?
Yeah.
So in this double closing situation, you got to make sure that you have your money lined up. Even though it's a short period of time, there will still be cost to that money. And in most cases, you're going to pay a point or two, depending, right, on the lender you're using, because they're not really making money on a interest per day basis, right? Because there is no days. So the way you're going to pay this lender is going to be a point or two of the loan amount. That's all. That's what they will charge you. And usually they'll charge a little bit more because it's a lot more riskier and they're not making daily interest on you. This is a one-time thing. So they might make 2-3 points, but on the purchase price, let's say, of 300,000 and you need 300,000 to close, in most cases, they might bring all of the 300,000 and then you pay them $3,000. But if you're making a wholesale fee of 30 grand, that's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So you got to keep that in mind and factor that into your numbers. And then the rehabber, at the same time, there's a separate escrow number open, and I'm speaking from a California perspective, between the rehabber and myself, who's the wholesaler still in the situation, except I'm choosing to do a double closing. So I have a escrow open for between me and the seller, and then between me and the rehabber, and then they're putting a deposit in that I want, right? And then, but they're also agreeing to the same contract terms, basically, that mimic my contract with the seller. Because the biggest thing you want to do is the seller, all they care about is, are you going to perform according to the contract that you and I signed? The moment you start deviating from it, that's when things can blow up, period, right? So you have to be very clear with your investor, like, hey, you only have 7 days left to do your due diligence. Yes, I had 17, but now we're down to 7, as an example. So there could be some differences between the contracts, if you follow what I'm saying, right? Because if I'm going to lock up my contract with the seller and I'm going to give myself, let's say, 2 weeks to do my due diligence and then sell it in 21 days, but I find my rehabber a week into me being under contract, well, guess what? My due diligence period just got shrunk to a week. But what if this rehabber wants to do the due diligence? Well, do I not let them? Well, they might not want to move forward because they might think something is off here. So then I have to tell them, look, my due diligence period ends in a week. So you will have a week to do your due diligence. And that's how we're going to put together our contract. And then you still have to close a week after that, because that's what I agreed to with my seller. So they don't have to be exactly the same, I guess what I'm saying, in terms of the due diligence times, closing timeline. What has to match is definitely trying to close on the same date or sooner. And I've had situations, whatever, I've had the rehabber, in this case, column, right, the end buyer, close sooner than what I agreed upon with my seller. And that's a beautiful thing, because now the seller is like, oh, we're closing sooner and earlier. You could do that. Just because you agreed to, let's say, day 21 of next month, like that doesn't mean you can't close on day 14. The seller is going to be happy. It's the other way. That's where things can blow up. Where if your rehabber says, oh no, I have to close on day 25th of next month, you were like, no, hold on. Before I agree to that with you, I have to renegotiate with my seller. So before you agree, go back to your seller, be like, hey, Mr. Seller, can we push our closing an extra 4 days? Get that agreed upon before you sign a contract with your rehabber, because that can literally blow up your deal, right? And I would say it can happen. It's risky air, like I think Eric mentioned, that if your rehabber backs out, you're basically stuck in terms of closing on the property. But the way to avoid it is that you get your rehabber locked in and remove their due diligence period before you remove yours based on your contract agreement with the seller. That's how you avoid some of the risk. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, so we have two good questions. Nicole asked, so she's a rehabber and a realtor. When she's wholesaling, should she run this through her managing broker? She uses a different LLC for both. Ask your managing broker. It's going to be different for every single brokerage. When I worked at KW before I went to EXP, the only thing that our brokerage wanted, he was fine with us wholesaling. The only thing he wanted was an agency disclosure signed by us as the buyers, and then the sellers signing as us not representing them, just to cover our butts as realtors. So we still do that. And then with EXP, there's a little bit more, just it's very state dependent. So talk to your broker. But I would talk to them.
I know Nicole. So Nicole, so at EXP in particular, we're allowed to wholesale, but every state is now creating a little bit more of their guidelines. So if you have specific questions, I would talk to them. But then if you run into issues, let me know.
And we are, if we wholesale at EXP, we are supposed to have our own E&O insurance. I think it's like for 150,000, but it's not anything crazy. And I think that's across the board. And then is double closing more costly, meaning you're paying closing costs twice? It depends on the escrow company and the title company. If you have a relationship built up, like some of our title companies, we have relationships built up where if we wholesale, it's one set of closing fees. That's usually not going to be the most expensive part of closing fees anyways, at least in Ohio. Like, you know, deed transfer and all of that's not going to be expensive. If you want title insurance, it can be transferred to the next party, and vice versa. It is costlier. So that's why we actually have the third type of wholesale, which we can kind of go into right after this, which is this exact same.
Hold on. Before we do go into it, we'll get into it in a moment, Eric. So a couple of things about costs I want to bring up. So one thing that most investors mess up on, and I'm pretty sure this is going to work across all states. You're going to have to get a title policy between you and the seller on the first contract and ask for the binder. If you don't ask for the binder policy when you're buying it from the seller on the first closing, you'll actually end up wasting probably an additional $1,000 or more. The binder policy lowers your title policy on the second closing to literally like a couple $100. That's it. So make sure that the first closing has a title binder attached to it. It's worth every penny. You pay maybe another $100 for it, but it will save you a couple thousand on the back end on the second contract. And then I agree with Eric, what he said. Like our escrow company, we've negotiated with them years ago, and they charge us a flat fee of $750, period. So now if we're doing a double closing, well, then we're going to have to pay that twice, right? On our end. So you can negotiate fees with your vendors and let them know, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm looking to do, you know, a volume-based type of a business here, or I'm working with investors that do a lot of wholesales. Are you willing and able to do a more of a flat fee structure? Is that something you're comfortable with? And again, some attorneys will say no, some attorneys will say yes, some title companies / escrow companies will agree and some won't. So like that is savings in itself for us, because we know going in what is going to be our cost basis for each escrow, where in most situations on traditional business, the escrow fee is based off a percentage of the sales price.
Yep.
Right. So if I can lock in a flat fee, then I already know what I'm paying. So I just want to add that to this whole situation. And then we can get into the last one, like Eric was saying now. So
Quick question on the double close. So you're typically going to be under contract as the buyer and as the seller simultaneously?
that's right. At the same
Yeah.
time.
Okay. Do you have like a contingency in your second contract that says it's contingent on you successfully closing as the buyer
Yes,
or something like that?
that's correct. Yep. The second contract will have a contingency that says, I have to close on this in order for you to buy this. That's correct. And again, and I also want to protect myself in a second contract to make sure that they remove their contingencies before my contingencies run out. You follow?
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's why, like, part of it too is like we close on everything, and that's why we have multiple exit strategies, is because it makes it a little bit easier than having to rush through. Like, if that seller, most of the sellers that we meet where it's going to be a wholesale situation where we have those numbers to get in there, there's usually a reason that they're taking that price over putting it on the market. And it's usually whether it's motivation, or they need out quick, or they need the cash, or they're going into foreclosure or something like that. So at least in our case and scenario, like what we do in Cincinnati is we don't have enough time to, okay, let's get it under, let's have contingencies, let's have these dates. Instead, it's just, we'll close in 7 days. As long as you're not on a septic tank or a cistern, if you're on public utilities, we'll close in 7 days, no inspections. And then once we close it in 7 days, that's when we turn around and we start shopping it. But we always have multiple exit strategies on those shops. So like the one in Batavia that I posted in the group last week, we can wholesale it, or we can turn around and flip it. And we know that if we wholesale it, could be making 20, 25 grand. If we flip it, we could be making like 35, 40. Makes a little bit more sense for us to wholesale it because it's just quick, less, it's right now with the market, it's less risk involved. And if we can wholesale it off, cool, we don't have to worry about it. Let's move on to the next one. But at the same time, we know there's so much meat on the bones that if we have to flip it. So for us, it's a little bit less stressful, and it doesn't put the seller in a situation where they're waiting. And that's why a lot of times they'll go with our offers instead of going on the market or working with someone else.
Yeah, very good point. Maybe next, in a couple weeks now, on the third Thursday, you think it would be helpful if I actually pull up a deal analyzer that will have all of the numbers and how you can quickly make decisions if there's even room here for a wholesale, right? Because
Yeah,
I think, like Eric said, like there's got to be enough room where the end buyer in this case is usually going to be a rehabber. They still have to make money.
mhm,
If they can't make money, that means there's no room for you to wholesale.
yeah.
Right?
And
So,
that's one of the biggest things that we run into in Cincinnati. There's so many wholesalers, and they'll get these deals under contract, and they're these, they'll send them out. They have all these disposition lists, they have cash buyers galore, and nobody wants to purchase the property because they pegged it as a 400 ARV and it's a 300 ARV, and they're selling it for even 250. So off their 400, they're like, there's 150,000 here in equity, but they ran their comps wrong or something like that, or misjudged the rehab, and everybody walks the property and they're unwilling to purchase it. So what ends up happening is a lot of those wholesalers will do, luckily, assignment fees, but then you have all these upset sellers who are either suing for specific performance now. That's one of the things they're doing because there was a contract there previously, or they're so disgruntled, they're making sure that everybody they know is, you know, aware of this person, and it's ruining a bunch of the wholesalers' reputations, properly. So knowing your numbers is one of the biggest things with wholesaling.
yeah, like for example, like us with our CT Homes company that I ran, we didn't blast it out to hundreds of people. We made relationships with a few, like literally a handful that we knew and trusted, that if we brought them a deal and if they said yes, we knew they were going to close on it.
Yep.
And then you want to get to that point, right? Because the moment you start blasting it out, it becomes challenging, to be honest, to manage it all. And then second, you might be seen as like, oh, here we go. They're just trying to get the highest bid and they're going to just bid this up and there will be probably no money left for me as the rehabber. Like it might backfire against you, right? I think I like the one-on-one relationships, meeting people like we discussed at different meetups, getting to know their taste, their what are they looking for? Because you might have a rehabber, you might have a buy and hold person that will pay potentially more. So imagine you had, 5 buy and hold investors and you just locked up a triplex at a number that makes sense for a buy and hold investor, but it doesn't make sense for a rehabber. Or guess what? You can literally just call those buy and hold investors and still be able to wholesale to that person because the numbers make sense for them, but they will not make sense for the rehabber.
Yeah.
Right? So building your network and understanding different buckets of, okay, what's your flavor? Oh, you want to rehab and sell. Okay, so I got to get it to you for a little bit lower. Oh, you want to buy and hold on and rent? Oh, so you can pay a little extra, right? Once you start grouping and your network into that, then it becomes easier to actually wholesale and decide, okay, do I even have room here? And if so, for who? And Andy, you have a question?
Yeah, I got a question, I have a comment as well. Somebody was asking before about wholesaling as licensed. My only suggestion there would be to make sure you read your independent contractor agreements to be
Yep.
sure what your broker's policy is on it, and check your E&O coverage. You can get like an E&O rider to do some of these things like commercial sales, and wholesaling is not much, and it's well worth the protection if you end up with some issues. So the other thing is I would love to see you guys do some deal analysis and that kind of thing, because I've sat down before with other investors and they've shown me other ways to make money on properties I wasn't really seeing. I see a property and I see it like that it works one way, and somebody else's perspective shows me there's maybe another way that I could do something with that. So I would love to see you guys do that. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. No, I think it's,
we'll do it. That's
yeah,
fine.
I think
Go
it's a
ahead.
good idea. Two, and this is a side kind of a realtor thing. This is how I view wholesaling, and I think everybody's gonna have a different approach. We as realtors, Association of Realtors, NAR, we owe a fiduciary duty to a client. You also have to be very careful if you go to a seller and you say, the comps are showing 200 on this house, let's lock it up for 100, but really the comps are 300, you can get in trouble. So be careful with what you're saying to the client. Be careful, it can be considered misguiding or misleading somebody. And when you're a part of NAR, if you do it the wrong way, you can lose your license and get fined a ton. So that's why we always go into it. It's just like, hey, if we're here to help, we can, but this is what your house is worth. This is how we can help with a quick close. If that fits, we'll do it. If not, we'll try and find something else.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up, because what I recommend to most investors, I would say team up with a full-time realtor that knows traditional business. So you guys maybe can even go to appointments together.
Yeah.
And you can basically come with a server approach, be like, look, Mr. Seller, this cash program doesn't work for everybody, but if you need to sell quick, it will work for you if that's what you need, right? And if not, it's okay. Here's my agent that I list all my houses with, and they could run an analysis of what this could potentially sell at in the open market. It's not a guarantee, right? Because there will be contingencies and things could change in the market in 30, 40 days. My cash offer is, if you accept, we're closing, right? That's the difference. And trust me, there would have been no Zillow cash program out there, an open door, if there was no sellers willing to sell to cash buyers. Those programs would not exist. And
Yeah.
they didn't necessarily scam people either, right? They just said, you're paying for convenience. Do you want that, right? You're getting less money for convenience. That's it. And a lot of sellers, believe it or not, will agree for different reasons. And I've had it happen to me. I've dealt with sellers like that. They don't want open houses. They don't want anyone through their house. They don't want their neighbors knowing, period, right? So just know that it does happen. But I solely agree with Eric. Like, you have to be ethical. You got to be honest, right? And then wearing both hats, if I was you, I would be careful. I think that's very difficult. I've done it myself. Back in the day, I've done it. I wore more hats where I was able to come in and say, look, we do, we buy houses, but we also, have a brokerage, and I can do both. It depends what your situation is. It's just not as easy, right? Because it's hard for you to be like, put on a hat and say, I'm the best investor there is in, San Diego. And then you realize that's not really the way they should be going based on the non-motivation. And then all of a sudden you were like, put on the realtor hat. Actually, you know what? Now I am the best realtor in San Diego. It's like, all right, well, which one are you, right? And you could be good at both. It's harder to convert, either one at that point, and I think the seller might get confused. So I always say team up. It's probably a lot better. So if you have an investor and you're the realtor, go together, and that's probably the most successful way of doing it.
Yeah, and anytime you give somebody options, option A and option B, it's not saying no to just option A, it's saying no to option A and saying yes to option B. But just so we have time to do the breakout rooms. So the third way of wholesaling, it's going to be very similar to the second one. The only difference is, and this is what I was talking about with your closing costs being a little bit less, is if you notice at the very bottom, there's not cash underneath the wholesaler. So you're not bringing the funds to close the deal and then turning around and closing it again. What you can do with an escrow company or a title company is you can have funds wired from your end buyer to the title company, and they'll hold it and you can sign, and it's considered a dry closing. And it should be the same for you, Randy, a dry closing. And then what you do is turn around and close with that other buyer immediately after. And then they're providing the funds. The funds then get shipped off to the seller because it was a funded deal. So it's actually kind of similar to almost a loan officer situation. This one is great because you're not paying double closing costs. You don't have to have the funding in place. The really risky part of this, the reason I don't do it, is because if that end buyer for whatever reason wakes up that morning and decides to change their mind, or they're late to wire their funds or anything like that, I don't even want to think of the consequences, because now you've signed this contract with dry funds stating that you're going to be purchasing it and you don't have the money.
Oh, Eric, so it's different here. The way, I don't know if I did a double closing recently with the end buyer's money. We had two closing costs still. It's treated the same exact way. They use the money from the end buyer to close on the first one first. Huh? Yeah.
You just closed your selling side first.
Yeah, and they're actually using, and they can't do it until the money from the end buyer is in escrow, ready to go. And they're giving them permission. It's disclosed to them how this is being done, right? So them backing out at that point is probably not happening, because their contingencies are already removed by then. Their deposit is hard, and I usually make the deposit bigger, from them than what I usually put in with the seller. So they have some money on the line potentially. Now, can it blow up? And of course, that can happen in any transaction, but the risk is minimized when the contingencies are removed, their deposit is hard, and it's a painful deposit, right? Where there would be some pain if they back out. And then the funds is already wired to escrow. And then escrow, in our case, used that money, closed on the A to B, and then the B to C was taking place at the same time. And how it happens behind the scenes, I don't need to know. All I have to do is call the escrow company and the title company and be like, are you guys comfortable with a double closing? That's question number one. And then question number two was, are you comfortable using the C's buyer's money to close on the A to B? And they said yes to both. And I was like, perfect. So you guys handle it. I let them do it. They might not, if they said no, I probably still would have proceeded and brought my own money, right? As long as they're comfortable with the double closing.
Yeah. So I think it's similar. It's just you're closing on your sell side first. I think the biggest thing is making sure that, so typically we can wire the money to the title company a day before closing here. So I like to know, if you're doing it this way, I like to know that day before that money is wired, before that buyer signing off on anything, and before you would be signing off on anything. I wouldn't want to wait an hour before, kind of like a normal transaction, a retail side where you're waiting for that buyer. They just went to the bank an hour ago. Funds might or might not be deposited, might be tomorrow to send the wire. So I guess with this one, my only thing personally would be just making sure that those funds are deposited the day before I sign off on anything.
That's right. And so correct me if I'm wrong. Are there really no double closing costs in this one, or you think there are? Because I think there will be two closing costs even in your dry closing, because it's two closings.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, kind of you would, but so one of the things we do is we don't pay title insurance for the buyer. So it our deed transfer fees are $90 depending on where it's at and stuff like that. And obviously you don't have taxes to pay. We pay our taxes in arrear in Ohio. So you pay for the past 6 months, you just own the property for an hour. So the closing costs are pretty much minimal, and our investors, they can buy title insurance if they want, but we're not paying for their title insurance. So, we can say, hey, we have a clean bill of health on the title insurance. We just got it yesterday. It's your choice if you want to buy title insurance or not.
Got it. Okay.
So
Yeah.
ours are pretty low. And then, like I said, because I've got workarounds with title companies, most of them don't care and they'll just turn around and close it for us because it's another 30 minutes for the notary.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Good stuff. Any questions before we do breakout rooms on, I know it's could be a little confusing, and I think the challenge becomes that each state is a little different, right? So I hope you got the general idea and know that you're gonna have to be a little bit flexible depending on what your state allows or doesn't. And then if you're a title state or a attorney state, then that's gonna be a little bit different. So, but the general idea stays the same. It could work if it's allowed in your state, either one of these three options. So are we good on any questions you see? I don't see anything else in here.
No, I don't think.
All right,
So
cool.
I haven't seen any pop up.
All right, cool. So we're gonna just do two breakout rooms, and the idea behind the breakout rooms is for you to share what maybe you're working on that might be beneficial to your group. Maybe you're stuck somewhere and you want to just get some feedback from others. Yeah, those are usually the main things that you might want to cover because you only get a minute. So please don't hog the room, okay? And get to know each other, and who knows what can come from that, right? We have people from all over the US here. So I'm gonna do that right now when we come back and finish it out in a moment. All right, you're gonna see this pop up in front of you and agree. Boom. All right, breakout rooms are closing. Welcome back. Cool. Any final takeaways and shares from maybe what you guys heard in the breakout room? We always want to hear as well. If you can, anybody want to share anything? Or questions too, maybe that came up that we can help you answer.
I have a quick question, Randy, and maybe you've covered this on another session, but EXP has this program called Express Offers, which is working with cash buyers that the brokerage lines up onto their platform, kind of a competitor to the ones that you mentioned, the Zillow and the other one. I was wondering if anyone has done any deals through that program. I just got certified in that program, so I was just wondering how much success people have had or whether there was awareness of it.
Yeah, so here's what I know. So our flipping company that I used to run, CT Homes, that you're aware of, Philip, right? We are actually one of the buyers that's approved to be on the Express Offers list, as an example. And I can tell you that we've closed on deals because of the Express Offers program as an investor. And there must have been an agent in the middle that made money at EXP. So I guess what I'm telling you that, yes, the program works.
Okay.
Most brokerages will have this iBuyer program relationship. Some are in-house, but most are not doing it in-house. As you see, like Zillow's, they lost a lot of money on it. So they closed it. But usually the bigger brokerages, they end up partnering with investors that are credible and have met certain criteria, such as like our company, we've met that criteria. So we're on the short list that if a seller reaches out to the brokerage on their public facing website, because they have a website that says, hey, sell your house quick, right? Express offer guarantees you 3 offers within 24 hours, whatever their pitch is. If there is an inquiry, they will then connect that inquiry with an agent, and the agent at EXP in this case, so if you're working for a different brokerage, it would be with, that company. And then usually they will automatically connect that seller too with those 3 investors that were vetted and approved to go and offer on that property. You follow?
Yep.
So one thing to think about if you're working with investors. One of the things you can actually, leverage if you have some program like we do at EXP with this Express Offers program. If you meet some credible investors, see if Express Offers, number one, if they are interested in adding more credible buyers to their list, right? And then you can ask the investor like, hey, are you interested in maybe being added as a cash buyer with our brokerage? So if they have any leads in our area, they will reach out to you. And now you look again, very professional, and you're adding value to them, right? So the chances of you doing business with that investors just go up quite a bit, because now you're introduced them to an opportunity that they never heard of before, right? So that's just a side note. So depending on what your angle is and how you want to leverage it. So yeah, that's my take on it. I know it works, and I know you can make money with it. And like, I think one of the things Eric said earlier, sellers like options. And now as an agent, if you have an iBuyer program in your brokerage, you can now provide an additional option to that seller that you'd be very surprised how many might take it. Right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a nice option to have along with other investor cash buyers who may not be part of that program.
That's right. Yeah. On top of that. Yep. Awesome. Another share before we close it out. All right, cool. Good stuff. All right, everybody. So we'll see you in 2 weeks and on the third Thursday of the month. And we'll see. We'll talk with Eric if we're ready to do a deal analysis yet, or maybe continue with the creative closing strategies, because I know we still have some like seller financing and things like that to talk about within this theme. So we'll let you know what it will be. But good to have everybody, and see you hopefully in a Facebook group as well. And if you have any questions, post them there so we can help you answer in that Facebook group.
Absolutely.
Later.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.